Good afternoon, friends. David Wright here, and I am your host of the Disruptive Innovators Champions of Digital Business podcast. And I am very excited today to be joined by my friend Ken Knapton. Ken, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Great to be here. I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah, I know it's been a while in the making, so we made it happen. Ken, for those of our listeners who may not be familiar, can you just share a little bit about your current role?
Yeah, so currently I'm working for a company called Win Brands, which probably nobody knows because it's not a brand that's out there. The two brands that we own are Costa Vida Fresh Mexican Grill, which is a fast casual QSR, about right around 100 locations, several states here in the West primarily. And then the other brand is Fat Cats Entertainment, which is a family entertainment center, cinema, bowling, arcade, mini golf, and delicious food there as well. And that one we have 9 locations in 3 different states.
Yeah,
So very very different businesses, right? But yeah, still lots of commonalities there.
I had heard of I had heard of Costa Vida prior to meeting you, and then I got to learn about Fat Cats, so excited to learn more. And it's interesting. I had the opportunity to learn about Terribles. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're like out in Vegas, but they own all sorts of different businesses too. The founders there are like very um, they like a lot of different things, but, I will be interested to learn from your experience of what it's like to need to manage 2 disparate businesses, 2 different brands under one umbrella, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of cool things to discuss. But can we like to start our episode with just, uh, if there was one piece of actionable advice you'd look to leave our listeners with today. I'm sure we'll get to more than one, but if there was one that we had to go with, what might that be?
Yeah, for me, it's this idea that you hear it a lot, right? If it isn't broken, don't fix it. And the one kind of thought that I'd want to leave with your listeners today is that that is some of the worst advice that's some of the worst advice in the world. That
Mm,
if it isn't broken, don't fix it is a recipe for failure. It's one of the most destructive mantras I think in business because
mm.
find if you look for those things that aren't broken and look for ways to improve them to make them better, that's where true innovation lies.
Mm.
So if it isn't broken, don't fix it, is a way of kicking the can, especially
Yeah,
from the IT world, right? Say, hey,
right.
that server's running. It's great. That server's doing fine. We don't have to upgrade it. We don't have to change it. This system is working great. That's setting yourself self up for failure, a year, 2 years down the road.
I mean, it's really, it's just a great way to start the episode, man. What a profound statement. A little provocative, but
Yeah.
so true, I think now more than ever. Um, I feel like I don't feel like for years we saw IT's responsibility really to be more of a utility, right? Like to keep the lights on, to keep the
Keep the
servers
lights on.
rising.
Yep.
Now, uh, there's there's so much opportunity to address um operational opportunities with technology and to enhance workflow with technology and to collaborate with stakeholders across the organizations, our customers really as IT and digital stewards. And it takes looking on like looking at those things that are seemingly working. And I think to take it a step further, and I was having this conversation, I got to participate in a women's disruptive leadership summit in California a couple weeks back, and um, I was thinking about how in a lot of the organizations I've seen a lot of really tremendous women leaders that were really hooked into emotional intelligence and what it takes to change an organization culturally and really go out and enroll people. And well, a lot of my mentors in tech, they grew up the way I did, which was like we push our emotions down, we keep it moving. Like I wasn't always keyed into like personalities and like really
Yeah.
like putting myself in other people's shoes, and like a lot of that stuff in my experience to successfully innovate is actually a really key component.
Yeah, no doubt. And it doesn't come natural for IT people, right? I started my career out as a software developer. And, I had my hands on the keyboard, my headphones on my ears, and the lights off, and
Right.
that's all I needed, right? And,
Right.
and as I kind of evolved in my career, I realized that talking to people, there's value there, right? It's not
Right.
just telling the computer what to do. I have to understand, what is it that we're trying to accomplish as a business, where we're trying to go, right? And having that human interaction, that discussion. Again, it doesn't come natural for IT people. Yeah, it's the proverbial seat at the table, right? Being able to have those conversations to be able to get you to have that seat at the table. That's kind of where we're headed, I think.
Right. And you also mentioned though a key word which I kind of fixated on too, which was I think it was like evolution
Yeah,
or
yeah, the evolution of
just
my career.
right. And I want to get into that, into your kind of backstory. But to me, when I hear a leader like yourself mention something like that, Ken, it implies a level of uh humility and kind of being a student of the world and your role. And I think that's so key because another thing that I've seen colleagues in our industry held back by is an unwillingness to like stay open to concepts like that. Like they're especially a lot of like managers and like engineers, like they get stuck in just their way of doing things and seeing things, and then they don't really want to change. And I don't think that's necessarily, just IT folks, right? But just
Yeah,
that's who I'm around most often, and I see that, and it's such a disservice, right? I think we can do so much more if we just stay open and willing to, uh, just keep growing, right? And not be so convinced that I know, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, so you're spot on. And I remember specifically in my career when that kind of light flipped on, because as a developer, I was going to say I was a typical developer. I guess I shouldn't paint with a wide brush. I specifically was pretty darn arrogant. I had a big ego at the
right.
time. I was a software developer, and I was actually pretty darn good at what I did. And you get this sense of creating something out of nothing, right? I can make the computer do what I want it to do, and it does exactly what I tell it. And and I was pretty set in my ways as far as,
Yep.
this is how you program, this is how you do things. And I remember specifically when the light kind of flipped and I realized that, wait a minute, there are some other smart people here. Right? I don't have all the answers. And kind of stepping back, especially as I moved into that leadership role, kind of stepping back and saying, wait a minute, what do these other people bring to the table? They're going to solve problems in ways that I wouldn't. That
Mm,
doesn't mean they're wrong.
right.
Right? And so that was a key that kind of transitioned for me relatively early in my career.
So I know, Ken, we were talking earlier about you're in beautiful, sunny Utah, but did
Yeah.
you start your career in Utah? Have you always been in Utah?
Yeah, so I've born and raised in on the East Coast, in New
Okay,
Hampshire.
nice.
But I moved out here to Utah, started my career here, and I've spent my entire career here in the Utah Valley. So
So I mean, you mentioned you were an engineer. Where did you start out in your career?
so I started at a little company called WordPerfect, which
Sure.
yeah, people tend to remember that company. But that was my first job. Started out in QA and then moved into software development there. And then when I left WordPerfect, I went to Intel and that's really where I started to learn more of the kind of the leadership. I feel like it was really a good thing that I was working at Intel at that specific time in my career, because they
Mhm.
have just a phenomenal leadership kind of development training. And so
I've heard
it was
that.
just really good timing. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, we started getting into it actually. Like, it sounded like one of the things that you learned kind of on your journey was, and I really identified this. I remember I had a moment in my career where uh my ego was no longer serving me. I don't think it
Yeah.
well, I don't know. I suppose it did serve me until it didn't, right? Like I was very motivated and very type A and very driven. Almost to a fault though. Like nowadays, like I would argue that I'm more successful than I've ever been,
Mhm.
and I'm busier than I've ever been, but I'm so far uh like less up my own ass, you know? Like I was so like
Yeah.
consumed with self that I was just
Yep.
like oh, it was just a hard and I was so uh fixated on the next place that I wanted to be or what I wanted next, right? Like and it was
Yep.
always about me getting to that place or not losing what I had already like accomplished or gained that it was so hard to be present in the moment. And I've found that the only way that I'm able to deal with the pressure of operating at the level that I'm operating now is by being present and not so worried about the future or consumed with the past. Um, it, what was it in your career when you saw that shift happening from like kind of like being like, oh, maybe these do people do have something to offer? Like, what do you remember like a specific event or moment, anything like that?
Yeah, yeah, I do. And by the way, I think you're spot on, right? And as a developer, I think my ego served me well. I was
Right.
able to sit down and code and get stuff done. Just tell me what I need to do. I'm going to go solve the problem, it was good. But I as happens in all industries, not just in technology, people who are good tend to be promoted into leadership roles, and it's
Hmm.
not it's a very different skill set. Right? To be a
Right.
developer is one thing, to lead developers is a completely different thing. And
Right.
so what happened for me, I was coding and getting some recognition for what I was doing, and started to kind of expand my influence from an architecture perspective. So now I'm not leading a team yet, but I'm working with other developers and kind of helping them solve problems and integrate and things like that. And then and then from there, I got promoted into a leadership role. And and at the time, this was at Intel. This was back when the internet was kind of starting to boom, and we were building these kind of pizza box appliances that go into the racks. And I was working for Landesk, which was part of Intel at the time. And Intel decided they wanted to bring three divisions together to build
Mm,
out this like management of these racks and take all these capable. So they had the hardware, they had us for the management, and they had another software group in Portland. So it was these three divisions that were coming together, and they asked me to lead that effort as the lead architect at this point.
yeah.
And I thought, okay, this is great because I already know what needs to be done. I know how to do this. So all I have to do is go to these two other divisions, talk to their engineers, and then tell them this is how we're going to do
Mm,
this, right?
mm,
And I remember flying to Portland and sitting down with their engineers, and they had taken a completely different software architecture path than I had.
mm,
And as on the plane, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to listen to them a little bit, and then I'm just going to tell them this is what we do. And when I sat down and started listening to them, I started realizing, wait a minute, they did things completely differently than I would have, but they have a very successful product. And
right.
everything they're telling as to why they made these decisions, that makes sense. And so that's when it kind of clicked in my head that wait a minute, I can't tell them they have to change everything now. I
Right.
have to actually go figure out how to make these two things work together
Right.
right? The two mature products that have been built on completely different architectures. How do we make them look like one product and without, completely going back to the drawing board? And again, that's when I kind of realized that, wait a minute, they, they, they were solving problems. They solved them a different way, but they solved them and it's working just fine. Right. Which kind of blew my mind. I thought this was how we solve problems. I thought this is what we did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. You know, my life, when I think about my leadership journey, has been, you know, made up of these seemingly subtle perspective shifts over time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And an instance like that is a perfect example. And some less subtle than others, right? Like for me, I remember there was a time when I had a bit of like a personal kind of hardship and
Mhm.
I had to take a step back and it was kind of affecting some of my family life and also I was working like workaholic kind of status
Yeah.
and it was there was fractures there and I had to in that moment it like all hit me and I had to kind of look at like okay, if I were to keep working like this and keep doing what I'm doing, but I lose all of this, like, what is the point of what I'm doing? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
what is this all for? I'm not gonna, like, swim in a, swimming pool with coins like Scrooge McDuck, like, by myself, right? Like,
Right.
I
Right.
mean and,
Yeah. What
I
do you
just
lose,
remember
right? By where you're headed, by the path you're going down. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
and it was just so, so significant, right? So no, it's great learnings. What
Yeah.
about, oh, and the other thing that, that what you said reminded me of is, like, the that me being comfortable and leaning into the I don't know, like,
Yeah.
of life, right?
Yeah.
Like, even for me, like, I was having this conversation with a mentee the other day, and a mentor, actually, another CIO when I was in California about, like, the fact that, I don't know why things happen in life the way they do in the moment, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, I choose to believe in kind of you know, the universe. I often refer to it as God. My spirituality is somewhat fluid, but the point is that there like that time in my life when I went through that personal experience. In that moment, if you were to ask me how it was, right, I would have it's bad. It's
Yeah.
awful. Like, I'm going
Yeah.
through this moment. Fast forward after having that perspective shift, that was one of the best experiences I've had in my life. I'm so
Mhm.
grateful that I went through that because it was the catalyst for so much change I've experienced since then. So I just bring that up from a leadership perspective, and I talk
Mhm.
to young guys about this because I don't know what's good or bad, right? Like inherently.
Mhm.
And if I get so attached to the like now I can feel a certain way. I could feel upset, I could feel angry. Like my first emotion is human nature.
Sure.
But I can process that and walk through it and not like catastrophize and kind of go down the rabbit hole. I can acknowledge, well, this happens and in kind of arriving at this place, one of the things that it's afforded me is the ability to have more difficult conversations, deal with
Yeah.
lots of different difficult situations. And I find when you rise to a position like you're in, it's just you're gonna have to deal with lots of difficult situations. It's just part of the role. But it's how you show up and walk through that and not kind of like get pulled down by them almost, you know?
Yeah. I love that perspective. It's understanding that everything changes, right? There's constantly change occurring around us and in us. And whatever situation we're in, when we're on the other side of that, being able to look back and say, okay, what did I learn about human nature, about interacting with others, about my job, about my role, about my family, right? Whether it's good or bad, right? Even the
Right.
good situations are not, forever, right? So
Right.
whatever situation you're in, and I think for me going through those tough things, because I've had similar challenges, had some personal, issues years back, and it wasn't fun to go through that. And work was different for me during that time period because you can't fully separate personal life from work life. But
Right.
but getting on the other side of that and looking back, right? Like you said, it just gives you a completely different perspective. So I think for me, the key learning is now when I'm in a situation that's painful, I can recognize that this is not forever.
Right.
There's going to be another side. And at someday I'm going to be able to look back and figure out what I needed to learn here.
I love that.
Yeah.
And for to take a step further for me, how can how can this painful experience or this thing that I'm going through now ultimately be useful to someone else?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
You
Yeah. I love
know?
that. I love that.
So can I wanna talk more about wind brands and
Sure.
'cause there's a lot that I think people will be able to benefit from and learning from your experience there. Before we do, I always just like to ask favorite book or literary piece or either like all time, like one of your faves or something that you've read recently that you might want to share with everybody.
Yeah. So, interestingly, I just finished a book called the Five Talents That Really Matter by Barry Conchie, and and it reminded me very much of Marcus Buckingham's book, which I've considered my like Bible for leadership of First Break All the Rules. Right.
Mm,
I read that year. I think that came out in the 90s, if I remember. It was a
yeah.
Gallup book, and it's famous now. But the two books, the one I read, 20 years ago, and then this one I just finished, very similar, right? The idea is that there are some things that we are told about leadership that we should question,
Mm,
right? Things aren't necessarily the attributes of leadership are not necessarily what we learn in MBA school or what people tell us, right? And so I think both of those books kind of had that similar kind of flavor to
mm.
them. So
I'm curious actually. So like what would be an example of like a characteristic that was like classically something that they would boast but like isn't necessarily characteristic of a leader in this example.
yeah, so one of the things that Barry Conchie brings out in his book is this idea that anyone can be a leader. We just have to train them right. We have to give them enough experience, give them, a good mentor, and
Mm,
anyone with the right training can be a great leader. And that's
mm,
that's simply not true, right? Some people just aren't meant to be leaders.
right,
Their skill set is extremely valuable. They're producers, but they're not meant to be leaders. And so
right,
we have this kind of general philosophy that, hey, if someone's good at their job, we should promote them and train them and get them, all the training and mentorship that they need, and they'll be a great leader.
right.
That's not true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I gotta.
interestingly, this came out in both of those books, right? So
Mm,
back in 1990, whatever it was, 95 or whatever, Marcus Buckingham's book came out. And today Barry Conchie's talking about the same thing. And still it's like a light bulb moment for people, right? Even though we've
right.
been talking about this forever.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I get that because even like on well, on any a lot of the teams that I've seen over the years, like internally and externally, like you have people that are kind of more you have people that are more dynamic, I would say.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you have people that are more point click, kind of like they're task oriented, they're time oriented. They want to go do the thing and then they want to be done, and that's great, right? And so we have them do the work that's, like that, and then, I find that those folks that are more kind of dynamic slash like they want to just keep going, like those folks I feel like are the folks that I've seen elevate into the more of those leadership positions.
Yeah, yeah, and I had there was an individual that I hired at 3 different companies. Great software developer. It was leading teams for me, development manager, and eventually, in I think the third company that I hired him, we were getting him ready for the VP role, putting him into that position, and he and I together realized that this isn't aligning with your skill set. You're a
Huh.
great developer, and
Right.
you're not having fun anymore. So let's move you back into this role, and not even a team manager anymore, just pure software developer. And I mean, this was years ago, and even today, I see him, and he's like, this that was one of the best moves ever. Like,
Wow.
help me understand that I don't need to climb that ladder. I'm happy over here. Right.
Right.
So it was that was a great learning for me.
Love that.
Yeah.
So how long has it been, Ken, at Win Brands?
Relatively new. So I started beginning of this year. So I've
Okay.
just crossed my 6 month mark. What last month? So
Very cool. So
yeah,
let's talk a little bit about your the vision that you've developed for IT and digital based on kind of the overarching mission of the organization, and maybe we can get into maybe some of the key initiatives that you're focused on.
yeah, yeah. Happy to. So as I mentioned, there's two brands here. There's Costa Vida Mexican restaurant, right, and then there's Fat Cats Family Entertainment Center. Vastly different businesses, and the owners of these two businesses have allowed them to operate independently for the 20 years of their existence. Completely separate organizations, individual, presidents with their teams and everything. And just in the last couple of years, they've been encouraged to look at synergies across the two, right? Look for those economies of scale. And when you start thinking about economies of scale, you think about the standard things, HR, finance, IT, right? Real estate, these other things. And so they started thinking about, well, how do we do this? And that's why they brought me on board. Uh, and so when I first walked into this organization, I had two completely separate IT teams, um, very, very different cultures between these two. And so in my chair today, I work very closely with the CEOs of each business.
Right.
And again, they're building their own culture within their organization, and we don't want to change that. We're not trying to merge the companies,
Right.
but we are trying to find those areas where we can find economies of scale. And
Did either
yeah,
of them have CIOs prior to you being involved?
no, they haven't
Yeah.
had the role before.
Yeah,
In
usually and we see that a lot with, like,
Yeah,
the multi-location quick serve or multi-location, even retail, where there's, like, a director or VP of IT, but
yeah,
someone with your kind of pedigree and knowledge and leadership kinda coming to the table now, I guess that makes sense that based on what they're trying to do.
yeah. That's right. So, and one of them was very heavily focused on outsourcing that an MSP that provided all their services for them. They had a couple of internal like help desk, break fix kind of guys. The other had kind of help desk infrastructure, heavy MSP as well. But that was IT for them. There was, even though they were doing things around data security, point of sale, these were all dispersed throughout the businesses. And
Sure.
so when I first came on, I sat down with those two organizations, and I said, "Okay, you guys have been thinking about this for 6 months to a year about integrating. What can we bring together?" And both of them said, "Oh, nothing. Our businesses are so different. There's nothing that we can do. There's nothing we do the same."
Word.
And so I had to help them understand that when we talk about a shared service, we're not talking about doing something the same way.
Right.
We're talking about implementing best practices and utilizing similar services to
Yeah.
allow each business to do things the way they do it.
Right.
And that kind of, that thinking kind of shifted their minds a little bit. And so that's where we are now. So like I said, I'm 6 months into it. We started integrating the kind of the foundational stuff, the email infrastructure, networking, all of that starting to come together, looking at cost savings from internet service providers, telephone systems, all that kind of stuff that you think about. But the area where we're really kind of focusing is on the data side. And this
Mm.
this kind of is a passion of mine. I have a doctorate in big data. I've been dealing with data forever. Privacy has been a big thing, security. So that's kind of my focus. And
Mm.
so bringing together the data tech stacks and
Yeah.
bringing the data itself together so that we can now start looking across both brands holistically, right?
Right.
And trying to figure out where how can we improve each of these businesses
Right.
based on the data that we have. And so that actually is not only a fun initiative, but it's a significant cost savings because they each had a completely different tech stack for dealing with their data. And now
Sure.
bringing them into one, we now have a single, entity, a single data warehouse where we can evaluate and analyze that information. So,
Very cool.
yeah, so it's
Are
it's
they
a lot
u
of fun.
are they either are either of them using a CRM as well?
So so that's another interesting thing. Um, sort of. Um, on the Costa Vida side, we had a CRM specifically from the loyalty perspective, dealing with
Right.
all the loyalty customers.
Yep.
On the Fat Cat side, they also had it wasn't not as mature, but they had a kind of a loyalty thing. But neither one really had a true like CRM across the board. And that's another thing that we're actually implementing as we speak is a
Nice.
single CRM dealing with both entities so that we can start looking at things like, what can we do cross brand loyalty
Right.
or even cross
Exactly.
brand offers, right? You buy a burrito, get a free arcade, free hour of arcade or something like that, right?
Exactly. Love
Yeah.
that.
So it's opening up some of these avenues for us. And again, I've been here 6 months. We're on the initial phases of this, but
Sure.
I'm really excited about where we're going there. And then
Have people
you layer on top of that AI, right? Once you get the data,
Right.
you have to have
Right.
clean data, you have to have and you have to have a solid kind of governance. Once you have all that in place, the things you can put in place from an AI perspective to do the predictive analytics for both entities,
Huge.
it's huge.
Yeah. Very exciting. Have since you've started identifying some of these, like, seemingly, to me at least, exciting opportunities
Yeah.
for synergy and have people bought into the vision? Like, are they yeah?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like I said, when I first came on, it wasn't just the IT group, it was even, people outside of IT looking at, well, wait a minute, you're kind of moving my cheese here, right? This is how we've
Right.
done things forever. Um, People are starting to recognize now that we're actually improving their life. We're removing friction instead of creating
Right.
it. And
Right.
again, it's early on, so there's still people who are saying, "I'm not sure I buy into this whole shared service thing," but we are gaining believers fairly
Yeah.
quickly. Yeah,
I think that's like par for the course, right?
yeah,
But it's it's great that you're enrolling those people, and my experience is that they when they can when they realize that you're empowering their vision, right? Like you're actually helping them realize their vision quicker or more efficiently. You're giving them resources they didn't have before, or data that they didn't have access to, or they say, "Oh, wow, like that's this is significant." That they don't lose, like in this case, because you're dealing with two totally different companies. Like a lot of the times we'll go into like we do a lot of on the consulting side, like customer experience optimization within an organization, and we'll find that they're like lately a lot in healthcare. Like there are different groups or different business units around an organization that specialize, like either in different clinical specialties or different functional specialties, and
Yeah.
they see themselves as terminally unique oftentimes. That and
Yeah,
for whatever
that's right.
reason, there's been infighting in the organization, and when we talk about creating a unified solution, people start saying, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! I,
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I don't. What will become of me? I'll become the hole in the donut." And it's like, no, like you're like unify doesn't mean you lose your specialization. Like we're not trying to change what you guys are doing so well. Like we wanna give you new tools. We wanna and like there's opportunity here. Hey, we're spending this, we could spend this, but you're not gonna lose anything. Like so anyway, it's
Yeah.
great that it's trending in the right direction for you guys.
Yeah, and
What
I
about
love that terminal what'd you call it? Terminal, uniqueness?
uniqueness?
Terminal
Yeah,
uniqueness, yeah, I love that. That's, I've seen that over and over and over, right? And, people always think that, "Hey, we can't do that here because we are so unique." I have yet to find a company that truly is as unique as they think they are, from an IT
yeah,
perspective, right? I mean, yeah, maybe
right,
their business model, maybe the customers they're serving, but from an IT perspective, I mean, I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in mortgages, I've worked in banking, I've worked in finance, I've worked in now in hospitality. I've
yeah,
been doing the same job in
yeah.
all those industries, right? Yeah,
Usually
love
it's
it.
those it's people that have comfortability in the status quo,
Yeah,
right? They,
yep,
in my experience, that usually are the biggest holdouts to thinking that way, right? Because they're just comfortable in what they know and they don't want to change, and that's an easy thing to lean back into
yep.
to really dig your heels in.
Yeah, that's right, and that's been one of the things that we've had to really work hard at just in these first 6 months is exactly that, helping people understand you're not losing your IT guy, you're gaining
Right,
a team. You're not losing
right,
your data guy, you're gaining a team, right? And and that's it's taken a little bit of, effort to help them kind of come to that thought process. But because the first thought is, wait a minute, what I'm losing, the way that I used to do things. I've done it this way for 20 years, right? So
right.
yeah, it's just
And
helping them
linking back,
understand. Yeah.
yeah, well, and this is a great kind of full circle moment, right? So,
Mhm.
li like, back to what you were saying in the beginning of the podcast, or what we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, I think for leaders, this is a great moment where it's so significant not to be telling or managing. It's, how am I touching, moving, inspiring these individuals across the organization to change? So how am I inspiring change rather than even recommending change, right? Because we need all of these people to do things to get things to change. And moreover, right, once the change occurs, all of these people are going to need to consume, leverage, and be enrolled in the technology. If they're not, right, and they're complaining to the executive team, like I've talked about on the podcast before, how early in my career I'd have a platform or a technology initiative seemingly implemented like flawlessly, and if my colleagues weren't happy about it, that it could be perceived as a dismal failure, right? And in
Yeah.
effect it was, because I didn't take the time to do things the right way.
Yeah,
And I
that's right.
think for me, like one of the things that I've learned is like the art of storytelling, right? Or like
Mhm.
the great leaders that I know, like, and like go back to like, Teddy Roosevelt even, like they know how to elicit like a feeling in someone that makes them want to do something.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can I continuously get better at that versus just like thinking about like the 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah, I think that's really, really well said. It doesn't matter if you implement a great solution if nobody uses it. And people, if you're asking people to do something differently, even if it's better, even if it's going to make
Right.
their life easier, you're
Right.
asking them to change. You're asking them to do something differently than how they've done it before.
Yeah.
You have to build that story, and you have to build it with them, right? These are
Right.
things that we do with people, not to them.
It's funny that you mentioned that because it got me thinking about sometimes I'll give the analogy in my meetings when I'm talking to like operational leaders about enrolling different groups throughout the organization about how we need and particularly in like IT digital stewards who are
Yeah.
operational leaders within the organization, how we want to give people almost like choice or give them a level of fortitude in the solution such that like accept but within acceptable bounds, right? So it's like
Yeah.
we can't give them all choice to do whatever they want, right? Or it's like a runaway train. I've seen organizations do that too, where you end up with 300 different variations of a solution. It's like to manage that, right? Um, and earlier on in my career, before I had the chops to be able to like, no, we can't do that, right?
Right,
Like,
right. Yeah, yeah,
I was when I was taking certain, I'm like, oh, this is not gonna be good, but I like wasn't making enough money where I could really had a choice to speak up.
yeah,
But like, it's like my toddler. It's like, do you want to wear the blue shirt or the red shirt, right? Like, as long as you're wearing a shirt, it doesn't matter to me what color it is, but you have choice, right? So like, we can customize it within acceptable bounds, right?
yeah. And again,
Um,
I think that kind of full circle moment. I think this goes back to the beginning of our early discussion around this role that has evolved over time, right? The IT is not a utility that we just keep
right,
the lights on. We have to be able to engage with our business. And I remember several times throughout my career where I'd be sitting in an executive meeting talking about cybersecurity or tech debt or whatever it might be, and the CEO, listening and then turning to me and saying, "Well, great, let me know when you got that fixed." I'm like, "No, no, you don't understand. I'm not going to go fix it. We have to do this together. This is an initiative, right? We've got to work together." But too often people look at the IT guy, they look at the CIO and they say, "Oh, security, that's your problem. I'm glad you're here. Go take care of it."
right.
And it just doesn't work that way.
Nope.
Yeah.
Oh man. Um, Ken, this has been great.
Yeah,
We're
it's a lot of fun.
almost up on time here. I like to end the episode with the question: if you could go back 5, 10, 15 years in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, so I think this goes back to, when we're talking about that evolution over time, right? Uh, for me, I went through that transition of I'm an engineer, I'm really good at what I do, moving into management, I have to listen to other people, and I was worried about losing my technical edge that I wasn't going to have anymore, right? Um, anyway, the thought that kind of comes to mind for me, if I could go back to my early self, um, what I would tell myself is that the days of the 30-year career, right, doing what you do, staying at one company for that 30 years and then retiring, those days are gone. And that evolution of not just not just companies but roles, right,
Right.
evolving and learning and doing things differently than you do today, right, is super important. So if I could talk to if I could talk to myself, 15, 20 years ago, I would say don't be afraid to kind of step out of your shell. Don't be afraid to switch companies, to switch roles, to take that opportunity to lead and shed some of these things that you feel are really, that make you you, right? I felt that I was a programmer,
Yeah.
and that was my identity.
Right.
Today, I'm not a programmer.
Right.
I look back on my career, I'm like, that is not what I do. But it took me
Yeah.
a while to kind of to decouple that from
Right.
who I am.
Yeah. And
So
if I
yeah.
would have stayed so staunch in that belief, for me, I would have sold myself short on so
Yeah.
many amazing opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed.
So cool. Ken, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, thank you all for tuning in, and we will catch you all next week.